So in this passage here, you have this a couple things that happen. First, you start seeing this word called Capernaum. Okay, so Capernaum is the spot we're going to first talk about tonight. Okay, so that's where we're going to be at tonight. So Capernaum, the town of Jesus. Okay, so I assume that a couple of you that have been to Israel, you've been there to Capernaum, and so if you follow the story goes that Jesus comes. Basically, he's leaving Nazareth. Okay, he's coming out through the valley. If you've been there, there's these mountains with cliffs, and the cliffs, if you come through the valley between the two cliffs, you're going to come from Nazareth out to this area. Geography's kind of taking the geography lesson for us. Capernaum is on the northwest of the Sea of Galilee, so is the northwest side of the Sea of Galilee. It's right on the water, okay? And so Jesus comes out from Nazareth. He comes to Capernaum. He's there for roughly, they guess, about 3 years or so. That he's just kind of like his home base. He's going to be there. He's going to start ministering from there. He's going to start just kind of you could say his ministry, right? He doesn't do it alone. We see just as we're reading that now all of a sudden he's recruiting some guys to join him, right? So we know that Capernaum it's mentioned 16 times in the New Testament. We know that it's never mentioned in the Old Testament. We know that it's probably more than likely going to be you could say a tax polling station. Okay, so for the Roman government, there's going to be like a tax polling station there. But it's really going to be, honestly, based on what we just read, what do you think it's going to be? What's going to be the main operations of Capernaum? If it's right on the Sea of Galilee, you just kind of heard what was going on. It's going to be like a fisherman's village, right? So the commerce is going to be fishing, right? So that's going to be where you're going to get some revenue and stuff like that. So let's go through some slides here. So everybody's tracking with me so far? We got it. So Capernaum is a spot where Jesus goes, kind of start his ministry. And so there's a bunch of stuff that happens why he's in Capernaum, okay? So let's go through some slides. And if you have questions, just say like, hey, Brandon, what do you think about this? Or did you see this? And I'll probably say, I didn't see anything. I mean, I don't know what you're talking about. I'll say, no, you're smarter than me. So here we go. So Capernaum. When you walk down when you park and you start down this long way into Capernaum, this is the sign you're gonna see. You're gonna see this sign here. And they gave me this nice laser pointer, which is dangerous. So you're going to see this building here as well. So you're walking down, you pass the sign, and you're walking down, and you see this building. It's going to be on your right. And you're like, wow, like this is really nice. Okay, I've got to stop and tell you, like, I've done this stuff. I've done these presentations for my students because we did a couple weeks of just Israel. So when I got back, I was like, hey, let's talk through Israel, and let's read it just like you did. And then after we would read it, I would show them some pictures and stuff. And the whole goal for me was that they would read the Bible and they would see stuff and it would change kind of their images in their mind. And any of you that's been to Israel, you know that. Like your Bible reads different after you've went because you start seeing and visualizing some stuff. Okay, so this is what I told the students. I said, you see this building here. You're walking down the street. You see the sign. There's sign here is on the left, and I only took a picture at a couple of places just to prove that I was actually there. Like that's what I told the students. I'm like, this is just to prove that I was actually there. But you're walking down and you see this building on your right side, and it's right on the water, and you're like, you know what? Like, hey, I could live here for 3 years. I mean, this isn't rough, right? I mean, Jesus living here for 3 years. Okay, get ready because it's going to change a little bit. So. When you're walking in a little further in, you see some statues, like there's just a bunch of things. This is actually a statue of Peter, and I know it's hard to see, but it says, upon this rock I will build my church. So you're going to see some of there it is. Thou art Peter, upon this rock I will build my church, Matthew 16:18. So right up there. So you're going to see some of these things, right? Then all of a sudden, you're going to see the Memorial Church of Peter, right? Because we also know that who else would have lived here? Peter would have lived here too. So this would have been a place where Peter, and you see this when we just read it, right? What's happening? Peter, right? He's out on the shore. He's fishing. Jesus walks up when he gets to Capernaum. He's like, hey, what are you doing? Come with me. I'll make you fish for men, right? So we know that Peter is this is kind of Peter's home and so forth. So here's what I know. It's one of the Strangest churches ever constructed. The architects, they probably got a gold star. If you see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There is 8 things that hold the church up. That's it. There's 8 columns that hold the church up. Okay? You follow me? And the reason is because they built this over what Peter's house, where they think Peter's house was, based on when they discovered it and started seeing artifacts and different things as they went through it. They believed that this is where Peter's house was, so they built this memorial church right over top of Peter's house, and they had to build it in a way that it didn't disturb the house, right? So they have these 8 columns, that hold this whole church up. Okay. So in the very center of the church, this is kind of the church here. So the center of the church, there is this square. You follow me? So you got obviously your chairs, or your benches, I should say. And so you got this square in the center. And the square, there's another look at it. So the square, all the square is just a glass, a window that you can stand there and look down into Peter's house. That's all it is. So there's Peter's house. You're like, wow, I'm impressed. You know, I know you wouldn't move in there, but this is where they believe Peter's house is. And notice the concrete beams across here. Again, they built this church over top of it purposely with that glass in the center so that you can look down at it, where they've discovered that it's Peter's house. They've built this right over it, and they've got these columns, and it's like this. It's almost like a floating church, right? And you guys have seen it, right? And you're looking at it, and you're just like, how in the world they did this? So again, just it's floating over top of what they believe is Peter's house. Okay, so up here on the right, you can see kind of the Capernaum as far as the village, all these little houses. This here is a view down to the Sea of Galilee. The Sea of Galilee is right there. So when you're just kind of looking down from the Sea of Galilee. So if you look at this village, you're like, wow, there's a lot of houses there, and there's a lot of rooms. And so you start looking, and then you realize that there's not just houses there, but what else would have to be there? If Jesus was gonna camp out there for 3 years or so, there's got to be something else that's going to be there. Anybody want to know? Anybody guess? Anybody? What's that? No. It's right here on the right. There's got to be a synagogue. You got to keep that in mind. Like back then, what was Jesus? Jesus was a rabbi. He was a teacher, right? He went around and taught, right? So if he's going to be there for an extended period of time, there's going to have to be a synagogue that's a spot where he could go and he could teach, right? It makes sense. So anyhow, this is the remains of what you could call. It's not the synagogue that Jesus taught in, because this one is built on top of it. Somebody gave us this analogy, or gave me this analogy, as far as when you're in Israel, that like when they've come through and destroyed stuff, like with a war or they've been attacked or whatever. Stuff gets leveled. And so instead of like cleaning it up or like, hey, let's repair it or whatever, they just put some dirt on. Let's just build on top of it. So they just keep building on top of it, and that's just what they do. You see that if you go to Jerusalem, you're going to see that everywhere you go. They've built on top of things. And so this is what has happened as far as this. This is the synagogue. Here's some of the columns and pillars that they've discovered. But this is actually not the synagogue that he taught in. This is the one that's built on top of it. Okay, follow me? So here's some of the walls, and there it is, right? There it is. So let me point out a couple things that I learned as far as with the synagogue. And where are we at? So you've got this area here. I know that it's hard to see. Oh, it's a better... This screen over here is better than that one. So you've got this area here, like this is a way that they've discovered as far as looking down into where the other synagogue would have been. Notice over here you got these like almost like steps, or you could call them, like for us, you could call them like bleachers, right? So that people would have literally, like they would have come in and they would have sat down especially like this. They would have come in and sat down, and Jesus would have been around, sitting around, and then he would have taught. Okay. Again, just walking around the synagogue, this synagogue that's left, this here, again, just because of these open areas, they know as far as obviously there's another synagogue underneath it as well. So another seating area where you would have just sat. A rabbi would have taught there. In the synagogue, obviously columns that are still there. So this is just looking back, looking at the synagogue. But now you're going to start seeing some of like the houses, right, that's left, okay? I showed you, like, it's pretty, like the ones that have been there, it's pretty, you walk in and you see this really decent, pretty large building when you walk there, and then you start walking around the grounds, and you start realizing, like, whoa, there's nothing left here. I mean, you have to, like, use your imagination a little bit of what it's really like. Again, remember this is kind of the map of what it was as far as Capernaum. The map of it, all these little spots or houses, some of them are connected rooms. So there you go. So that's what you see. So I was telling the students that I kind of bait them a little bit. Hey, would you live in this building for 3 years? Oh yeah, I'd stay there for 3 years. Okay, well let me show you really what it's really like. And this is really what it's like. So when you walk all around Capernaum and you're just walking through, and there's obviously only certain areas you can get to. They have obviously walkways and different things roped off a little bit or stationed off, I guess you could say, because you just can't see. They're not going to let you walk in all the ruins that are there. Sea of Galilee right there, so you can see how close the Sea of Galilee is. This is the synagogue that's still left. These are all the little spots. Every time that I was there, I tried to have like an aha moment, okay? Like let me rephrase that. The sites that I would go to, right? The biblical sites, the Jesus sites, those things. I always wanted to have one of those aha moments, like something in the Bible that would just be like, oh, I didn't think of that before, okay? And so when you start thinking about, let me go back. You start thinking about this whole layout, right? And then you start seeing all these little, spots where it was a house or a room that a family lived in or whatever, and you start seeing just one by one by one. And obviously, you're looking at pictures, but you have these rooms here, And my aha moment here for me was in my Father's house, there are what? Many rooms. Many rooms. I mean, like, there's just rooms everywhere, right? And I'm just thinking about that verse and thinking about, like, Jesus was here and there was all these rooms, like, they are just everywhere, and how many people crowded into these little rooms, how many families lived in this area here, and you see these and like, you can start to kind of picture, okay, well, this was a walkway into this area here, and so forth, when you're standing there and you're looking at it. So more just ruins. The students ask me, like, nonstop, like, okay, is that a toilet? And I'm like, no, they didn't have toilets back then, okay? But they get really, the students would get really fixated on, like, toilets, and I was like, I don't even know why we're talking about this. If you look right here, there's one of the columns that's holding up the church, St. Peter's Memorial Church, that's kind of like, again, floating over. So now I'll tell you, there in this area, this is the Sea of Galilee region, okay? And so there's a lot of, like, obviously biblical sites that are right around there, Jesus sites, right? And we'll hit a couple of them. But I got to tell you, this is like, I was talking to a friend he went to Israel, I don't know, probably 5 or 6, 7 years ago. And he said, like, for him, the thing that resonated with him the most, the thing that just for the whole trip, like, and he went to a couple of different places that I didn't go, but he's like, this for me, like the Sea of Galilee area was like my highlight. And I can understand why, because there's just something about that area in the Sea of Galilee area. There's just something about it. You've got a few things, and we'll talk about them in this week and then next week. You've got Magdala, you got Mount of Beatitudes, you've got the Jordan River that's close. You've got a bunch of things that are right there. Okay, everybody tracking with me so far? So again, I don't know what's in these, if these are just water buckets. I guess they probably went down and would get water from the Sea of Galilee and bring it up. Who knows? I have no idea. I didn't even think to ask, but they were sitting around from place to place. So okay. So this is the Sea of Galilee region. So this is just kind of a map, and so we are. Capernaum is right there. Okay, Capernaum is right there, and so forth. So here's what we're gonna do. Any questions? Anything you saw? Anything you want to you kind of see again before we kind of keep moving on? Any questions? Let me see what's next. Okay. It is not. It is not. Nope, it's not salt. We'll talk about the Sea of Galilee next. So before we jump to the next spot on our little tour, I guess you could say, our little glimpse, anything that you think, and you may say, Brandon, I haven't made the connection, but any of the miracles of Jesus happened in Capernaum that we know of? Any of the miracles that you know of that happened in Capernaum? Because there was miracles that happened there. Okay? Yeah. So you've got obviously a bunch of stuff as far as, because you're at the Sea of Galilee with the disciples, Peter and stuff like that. But here's a couple other ones that you may not realize. One is one of the I shouldn't say one of the famous, because I feel like all of Jesus' miracles were just insane, right? Well, there's the healing of the paralytic, right? There's this one that maybe you've heard of called Jairus' daughter, right? So Jairus' daughter was there, obviously, because we know that it was a Roman taxing polling station or whatever. So, right? So Jairus is there. His daughter's sick, right? And so he goes to get Jesus. Jesus is there in Capernaum. He goes to get Jesus and says, hey, my daughter's sick. Can you pray for her? And so we obviously know the story, right? Jesus is taking off. What happens? He gets stopped by somebody that has an issue that's been, most of her life she was dealing with this issue of blood, right? And so then he gets sidetracked, and who touched my cloak, and the whole thing that happens. And then we know the rest of the story. They come and say, your daughter's dead. And Jesus, no, she's just taking a nap, right? So I mean, we know that there's all kinds of Jesus' miracles that are happening right around here. Feeding of the 5,000, right? I mean, this stuff is all right here. Okay. Any questions before we jump? No questions. Don't want to see anything else again. Okay, so now we're going to jump to another one. Okay, and let me just. I have notes from different things, and I want to flip over to this.
Immediately he made the disciples get out of the boat and go before him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed the crowd, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. But the boat by this time was a long way from the land, beaten by the waves, for the wind was against him. And in the fourth watch of the night, he came to them walking on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified and said, "It is a ghost." And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." Did you want further? And Peter answered, "Lord, if it is you," he probably did like this, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water," he said. "Come." So Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came to Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Jesus immediately reached out his hand and took hold of him, saying to him, "O you of little faith, why do you doubt?" And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God."
Yeah, that's a great thought, to think about how, because like what's going on. There's thousands of people that are here at this moment, but so here's the life lesson for me. Okay, this is definitely not an aha moment that I had. This isn't necessarily some of the slides. This is just us talking about this story just for a second before we look at some slides. Like, the life lesson here is take a step back. Like, just take a step back. Take a rest. Get some perspective. Like, just dismiss yourself from what's happening. From life, from the craziness, from the chaos sometimes. How often do we just fail to do that? Do we fail to literally just say, you know what, I'm just gonna, I know my limits, and so I know my limits so well that I'm willing to, like, say, you know what, I don't know how I'm gonna dismiss, but I'm just gonna kind of walk off, because I just need some time, right? I'll tell you that overall, as far as why I was there, like, the fact that the Jewish people honor the Sabbath so much, like, it spoke to me, because, for 20 plus years I've been in vocational ministry. And so Sunday for me is honestly, is kind of like a work day. And, when I was in Michigan, the very large church, I mean, it was a very busy day. I would get there early in the morning, and I would be there until early afternoon. And then sometimes I'd be there all afternoon, depending on meetings and team meetings and different stuff that was going on. And when I would get home, I would be wiped out. Like, I needed a rest just from that day, right? So Sunday for me was not a Sabbath, right? My whole point is all this is, I feel like this is a great life lesson for us to see that Jesus says, basically, like, I just need some time. I just need a break. Yes. Yeah, I mean, maybe Jesus saw the wind, but they experienced the wind. When you read that, you read right now that the wind was kind of beating against the boat, right? They're in the water. For all of us right now that haven't been there, I'm about to destroy some of your thoughts, and that is, the Sea of Galilee is nothing more than a lake. It's about just over 6 miles wide, and it's about 9 miles long, and it's a lake. But when they named it, there was not a word for lake in Hebrew. There was no lake, so they called it the Sea of Galilee. Okay, so just keep that in mind. There's mountains all around it. It is lower than sea level. Okay, so sea level is up on the one mountain. It's low. It's lower than sea level. You've got all these mountains that are around it, so it's very easy for that wind to come down into the lake, I guess you could say, and just kind of beat that boat a little bit. Jesus is obviously in this story. He's taking that break. Now he's rested, right? And so he's like, hey, I'll join you guys in a little bit. You guys take off. And so he comes down, and he walks across the water. Now, I got to tell you, as a kid, growing up in the church, going to Sunday school, like, this story for me was my number one. Like, it was my favorite story, to the point, don't laugh, but my grandparents, years ago, they put a pool in at their house, okay? My grandparents lived in Maryland. That was where I was born. We lived there for a few years, and then we moved away. But we would always come back every summer to see my grandparents, and all my cousins were there. And I remember this one time, my grandmother had that rule, like, if once you eat, you have to sit out for a half hour. So I don't know who made that rule up, but whatever. I would purposely at times just not eat, because I didn't want to get out of the pool. But my cousins that day, everybody had got out of the pool, and I was the only one there. And the way that my grandfather kind of constructed the fence and stuff, it was like you couldn't, like you could get away with not being seen, right? So because his garage was right there, and he had the pool, the way it was sitting, you'd have to see it. So yeah, no one saw me, and so I remember clearly to this day. I got on the one side again. Nobody's there. Nobody's able to see me. And I got on the one side, and I said, "Okay, Jesus, I love this story about Peter walking on the water, and I just want to do it. And so I'm going to step out on this pool, on this water, and will you just please let me walk on the water so I can feel what Peter felt?" And I just went, "Okay, here we go, Jesus." And I mean, I'm talking to Jesus, I'm praying, and I'm just like, "Okay, I got the faith. I got the faith." I'm just like an elementary school student, you know. I got the faith. And I stepped out. Yep. And then I picked myself off the bottom of the pool because I went all the way to the bottom. You're like, did it happen? No, it did not happen. It did not happen. But I have to tell you, that's such a vivid memory for me, right? And this story was one of the stories. I mean, like if somebody was growing up, like, hey, tell me a story that just resonates with you that you just love. I'm literally, this is my number one. So what we're going to see is we're going to see the Sea of Galilee. So I'm going to show you a couple pictures. A couple of them are not necessarily, but they're going to help you with the whole experience. Okay, so what you're seeing here is simply this: the passage that we just read in Matthew 14. It is literally right there. So the first morning that I was there, this is from the balcony of the hotel that I stayed in. The first morning that I got up and I was reading my Bible, and I was like, if I'm at the Sea of Galilee, I know what I'm reading. I'm going to Matthew 14. And so I got up, and the sun was just coming up. See the mountain? The sun was just come up over the mountain. And so I was like, I'm going to read it. So I sat there on the balcony and I read Matthew 14. Because I was like, I want to read this and I want to see it. So I took the picture, and I am not a photographer, okay? So I'm not a social media person that's going to take this picture and be like, "Oh, that's a cool picture. I'm going to put it on my social media." No, I could care less. This was just a moment that me reading my Bible right there on the Sea of Galilee. This is a picture. I just wanted to give you the kind of the landscape of the Sea of Galilee. So this is a picture from the balcony of my hotel. And, you know, you see here, I know this is a little harder for you to see, but these are just pontoon boats. Those are just some little speed boats, I guess you could say. So this is not a port. There's no freighters coming through here. Keep in mind, this is the one side, and there's the other side as well. Like it doesn't, even though they see Sea of Galilee, you think it's something really, really large. It's not as large as what we probably, over the years of going to Sunday school and being at church and hearing stuff, pictured it in our mind, right? So this is kind of like their little marina, you could say here. So, okay. Just another picture. This was actually, I think, the sun going down. Okay, so on the right, this picture here is from my balcony. I just kind of, and I used my phone for all these pictures, and so I just kind of zoomed in because I was like, what is that? You know, I wanted to see it. And then the next day I went down because I wanted to see it, you know, right in front. And so that's just the shape of the Sea of Galilee. So you have the Jordan River that flows in from the north, and then you have the Jordan River that flows out from the south. Okay? Make sense? Jordan from the north, Jordan from the south. So Sea of Galilee. So what's the significance of this monument or this statue or this whatever you would call it right there? And it didn't show up on the picture, but right there is a digital kind of board. And the reason that that's there is it tells you the water level. So I was like, water level? Why? Who cares about water level? And so I asked somebody, we're like, hey, tell us about this water level thing. And they're like, they track the water level every day at the Sea of Galilee because the water in the Sea of Galilee they use all over the country. And so they're very concerned about the water levels at the Sea of Galilee. So you have this digital display here that kind of reads out where it's at, and they're always tracking it because that water flows all over. They've invented stuff. some of these you've been there. They're super innovative. Like they literally take water. You think about it. This water, the Sea of Galilee is below sea level, and so they're pumping water below sea level up mountains to feed water, to feed all kinds of to feed like orchards, and where they have apples and oranges and peaches and pears, and I mean it's just amazing to see what they've done. But so the water level is really important to them. Okay, so we're going to zoom through this just because we're going to be running out of time here soon. So there is an ancient Galilean boat, okay? And there's a little museum there and so forth. And so let's just look at it really quick, the ancient boat, just because it's kind of important just to give you a little bit of a visual, okay? So this is the museum. And for some of you that have been to Israel and have been in here at this museum, they're now using this museum as a school because of all the displaced families that have no place for to live. They're actually staying in hotels, and their kids don't have schools, and so they're using every spot they can find that's safe and so forth for schools. So this is a school. There's tons of like little things, art and stuff, and statues and stuff all over. I took a picture of this just for my daughter because she likes penguins. Yes, yeah, and also the conflict in the north as well, with Syria and Lebanon. So actually, now that I think about that, that's not a penguin, but whatever. Don't tell my daughter that. So again, you walk around the museum. There's all kinds of these statues and stuff. They're kind of cool to see. Some mosaic when you're walking in through the entrance. So this is going to be hard for you to see, but basically, here's the story of this boat, okay? They found, okay, it's right up here. You're going to see it's like 1980, I believe it is. So in the mud, the Sea of Galilee up there, the mud had, let me rephrase that. So the Sea of Galilee, the water level was low. And so in the mud, somebody was digging or somebody was doing something, and they hit something. And so like, oh, what is that? And so they started digging some more. So they started discovering, oh, wait, this is an actual, like this is a boat. And so they started digging some more. So they have all these pictures of them digging through and kind of uncovering this boat. But as they uncovered it, they realized a couple things. Number one, it was always in the mud, so it's always wet. So the more they uncovered it, the more that it's exposed to the sunlight, and now all of a sudden it's going to start decaying, it's going to start falling apart and stuff like that. So they had to quickly decide what to do, and so they decided to put basically a spray foam all around it, and eventually they sailed it across the water just a little bit, and they took a crane and they pulled it out of the water. So if you're there, you'd be able to see all the step-by-step of what they did. It was really remarkable. When they then discovered this fishing boat, look here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. They found 12 different types of wood in this that they were able to trace back as far as 12 different types of wood for the fishing boat, okay? So, they know that the fishing boat was old, and over time, it get patched, and this piece, hey, we got a hole here, let's grab this piece of wood and stuff like that. So it's got all kinds of wood that's able to help them as far as tracing the timeline and stuff, okay? So here's the boat. So once they got it out of the mud, put spray foam around it, moved it, then they brought it here, and they obviously took the foam off, and so there sits this ancient fishing boat. So I only show you this because for you to keep in mind, when you think of this, okay, hey, the disciples are sailing across the Sea of Galilee, right? And okay, well, they're probably sailing in a big boat, No, I mean, you're talking like a little fishing boat, right? And then those waves that Kevin even mentioned, those waves start hitting from the wind, you're going to feel it, right? So this boat they put there, okay, and so it's got all these basically metal straps or braces, I should say, all around it so that it's able to stay intact and not fall apart. And so it's very fascinating to see, but it gives you this great visual of what it would have been like. Now, was Jesus in this fishing boat? They have no idea. There's no way they could say, was Jesus in this? Is there a possibility? Sure, there's always a possibility, but there's no way to know that Jesus was ever in this fishing boat, but it's definitely old, okay? It's longer than what it looks, so I'm guessing that it's probably, I mean, it's probably the length of this row. I mean, it's fairly long. It's longer than the pictures make it out to be. So it's very, very fascinating. I only show you this because, and I was using this with the students, because for you to visualize, because I think that's the thing, we visualize something different. You know, growing up, and we're like, hey, let's talk about the Sea of Galilee and Peter walking on the water and stuff like that. You know, and then that is not the only story that we see as far as the Sea of Galilee. I mean, it's something we see in other stories as well. And so just to visualize, like, what the fishing boat would have been like back then. Think about now. Think about, hey, you're not catching any fish on the one side? Let's switch to the other side. Oh, okay, let's pull those nets up. Oh, it's too much and it's going to capsize the boat, right? Like you start seeing this, and you start thinking of these stories that you've heard for your whole life, and you're like, wait a second, I just picture that a little bit different, right? And then you see it and you're like, wow, that makes sense now. Like, how could they not pull all the fish up in? Well, they pull the fish in and it's going to sink the boat, right? There's just all these things now that just make a little bit more sense, okay? So here's some spikes they found as far as nails or whatever that they found whenever they were taking apart, of just that was holding it together. And then this is just, it's tough for you to see on the screen, but it's a picture of just the foam that when they used to pack it just to move it. So, okay. So here's what we do for the next few minutes. I'm just going to show you a couple pictures of the Sea of Galilee. I wanted to at least give you that picture of the old fishing boat so you can kind of keep that in your mind. I'm walking out. This is early in the morning, and me and the pastors that I was with, we were walking out the dock right there by the old fishing boat. There's a dock, and we're walking out, and I see these two guys fishing, and I was like, I just got to take a picture, right? I'm guessing they probably didn't want us to take their picture because another one of the guys I was with took the picture too. But it was just like, we just took it because it's like you think about the fishing thing is such a prevalent theme when you talk about the Sea of Galilee and just when you're reading through these stories. So I don't know. It's just, I took it. So here you go. So here's some of this. There's just going to be a couple shots of just the Sea of Galilee as far as for you to see. This is obviously, again, there's mountains all around it. Again, the Sea of Galilee is below sea level. It's low, and so you've got these mountains all around it. It's honestly, it's beautiful there. I really liked it. I'm just saying. So our boat was called Noah. And I was like, this boat is definitely not as big as the ark, right? But it was, I mean, who knows? They use these boats for the people that come there for their tours all the time. So again, my picture just to prove that I was there. That's what I tell the students. And so I'm standing up front there. The sea is in front of me. The Sea of Galilee is in front of me. So this is kind of the back of the boat. I'm not gonna lie, the boat was a little rough, right? You know, like the canopy was kind of tore up a little bit here and there. You know, maybe they did it on purpose just to, you know, give the image of like the storms that would come up. You know, because you think about this, right? You know, go back to this here. Something I forgot to tell you. Let's go back to this for just a second. You know, imagine this type of boat. Jesus sleeping in it. All of a sudden, a storm comes up. Their disciples get scared, and he's sleeping through the storm in this, right? I mean, how could you? He did. They woke him up, scared that they're going to die, right? So, anyway, just go back to it. So, as they do with everybody, so they put if there's Americans on board, they put the American flag up and play the Star Spangled Banner, you know, and so forth. Obviously, the Israeli flag was always up. So, and I got a good shot, obviously, of the sun that was coming through the star. So here's just a bunch of guys that were the pastors that I was on the trip with. We're just standing there and just really cruising across the Sea of Galilee and just taking it all in. This is an important shot here because I talked about this earlier. The cliffs, the two mountains, the valley, Nazareth that way. So Jesus would have walked out this way towards Capernaum from Nazareth. Okay? Everybody follow me? So obviously just, just kind of the shoreline. I had a couple students, and they're just like, I'm just blown away by this. I mean, I showed them this picture, and they're like, I'm just blown away by this. And I'm like, I mean, what are you blown away by? And they're like, I mean, where's the camels and like the sand and like the desert and stuff? And I was like, it's not here. And they're like, I just don't understand. I would just think Bible was like, camel and desert and just sand and just like that. And I'm like, well, if you go towards Egypt, right? But Israel is beautiful, and it's very green, and they've obviously done a lot of work to work on that as far as all of their vegetation and their crops and all the stuff that they grow there. They just grow so much. Especially in the northern part of Israel, I was blown away. You're just driving through one orchard after another, just all kinds of stuff. So it's okay. So here's a spot we went to it. We went to this little church here. What's fascinating about this church that's on the Sea of Galilee is the fact that it's built on a rock, and I got to be honest, I don't recall the name of the church. It had to do with Peter, and so there's a bunch of signs and different things. We just went there for a little bit and stood on the water and just kind of took it in. This was after we got off the boat. So one of the things you'll see in this picture right here is just a spring, because the fact that it's got mountains all around it, you're going to have like springs of water, fresh water that's flowing into it. No, it's not salty, or it's not salt water, it's fresh water. And so, but you have all these springs that feed it, right? And again, they're always tracking to see as far as kind of the water level and stuff like that, because it's very, very important to them, so forth. Of course, if you're on the boat, they're going to do the demonstration of throwing a net on the left side of the boat, right? And I'm guessing that you're going to be able to figure out what he catches, because everyone here is pretty smart. So he's throwing it out, making a big deal about it. These are actually, and you guys know, if you've been around fishing, these are just weights, so that whenever he throws a net, all those weights, then when he pulls the string, the weights go together, and he can catch the fish. And so he throws it, and then I don't have another picture to show you because there's nothing to show, because he didn't catch anything, and they thought it was the funniest, because we're on the left side and we're not catching anything, right? Like, okay, whatever. Let's go to the right side and see what kind of faith you have. That's what I wanted to say. Like, throw it on the right side. Let's try a different side of the boat. So, this picture really doesn't mean anything for you guys, but one of the teachers that I work with at VCA, she had made a bunch of cookies, and we were using them at school and stuff like that. So I just happened to throw one in my bag, and I was like, I'll take it with me to Israel, and I'll take a picture and send it back as a thank you. Like, hey, I got your cookie, and it's really good, and I'm eating it on the Sea of Galilee, So what do you see? Oh, whoops, let's go back. What do you see here? Anybody? Just calm. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. So when we were out early in the morning, right? And so you can, oh, come on, I'm hitting the wrong button. So you can see just kind of the haze still that's there, It was real hazy. So it's early in the morning still. It's not super early, but it's early in the morning still, right? The water is super calm. I mean, there's no other boats. You don't see anything. But I'm there, and I'm just thinking about this whole story that I started with, of Jesus walking on the water, and then Peter having that faith to step out. And you think about it, like with this haze that's there, just think about it. If, say, Jesus was over this direction, we don't, exactly know, but wherever Jesus was, it would have been probably the other way, just based on where he was at with the feeding of the 5,000. But think about that. He just starts walking, and there's this haze, and as you're walking out through that haze, you're just like you don't have a clear line of sight, right? You're not able to see clearly, And so they start like, who is this person coming? It's a ghost, right? It's Jesus, right? He's walking on the Sea of Galilee. I don't know that it's going to work just based on. But this slide actually here is actually a video, and so I didn't ask them to set it as far as the video. But so we're on. I'll just kind of wrap up here in just a second. We're on the boat, and we're going across the sea. We're just kind of cruising. It's, like I said, a little hazy. It's early in the morning. It's super calm. It's honestly, it was a beautiful morning to be out there. And all of a sudden, they start playing a worship song. And the song that they played was Jen Johnson. She's a worship leader out of Bethel in California, and they played her song "Goodness of God." And just that song was playing, and it's just again so peaceful and so calm, and you're just thinking through that as that song is playing, just about the goodness of God. And God is so good, right? So good. And yet sometimes we lose track of that goodness, right? We lose track of that goodness. Peter, he lost track of that goodness for just a second, right? Because the Bible that we read, like literally he started noticing the wind was starting to kind of, as he's walking on the water, he's taking his eyes off of Jesus, the goodness, and he starts putting his eyes on the wind. And then he starts to sink, and he starts to drown, and he starts to go down, right? And Jesus has to come over as he's drowning and pull him up, right? Why? Because he took his eyes off the goodness. What a lesson for us, as we think about the Sea of Galilee, is just like keep our eyes on the goodness of our God, because he's so good. He's so good. Is life easy? No. Is it predictable? No. Are we going to have challenges? Yep. But he's good.